What is up, X? What is up, Rumble? Welcome back to the Ryan Matta Show. That was a legendary interview with JJ Carroll, my partner in our What is Treason series. If you guys haven't had the chance to check it out at www.thisistreason.com, you guys can see that full interview and our several documentaries that we put out exposing this elite network of child trafficking pedophiles. But at the upper echelon, there is what we call, or what my good buddy Derrick Broze calls, the pyramid of power. And if you guys are not following Derrick over on X, he goes by at DBROZE live free over on X. And he has put out this amazing series called the Pyramid of Power over here at the Conscious Resistance over on his YouTube channel. These links are going to both be pinned down. Not pinned down because you can't pin on Rumble, but they're going to be in the main comments. I'll share them in the live chat too, but I want to put them in the main comments. That way, if you guys are watching this after the show, you guys can check it out. And Derrick does a better job than anybody I think I've ever met at literally taking really complex ideas and theories, specifically these, what Redacted calls as 6-month spoiler alerts, these conspiracy theories. And he breaks them down at a level where if you have no idea, you've never even skimmed the surface of it, he can break it down in a way that you can digest it and consume it. And it's probably the best that I've ever seen. So I won't over talk it. Derrick, welcome to the show, brother. Honored to have you back, man.
Hey, thanks, brother. How you doing?
Hey, thanks, brother. Let me turn up your audio. Do you have a way to turn up your audio? I can on my end, but if you have a quick, easy way, you could do it as well.
See if this helps at all. Testing. Any better?
Yeah, right there. Boom. Perfect. Nailed it. Brother, welcome to the show, man. Super excited to have you back.
Yeah, thanks for having me back, man. And thanks for the introduction. I really appreciate that. And I hope you enjoyed. I don't know if you ended up having time to watch the premiere of Volume 1, but yeah, thanks, man. Thanks for checking that out. Excited to talk about it.
Yeah, man, let's talk about it. So let's break it down. Pretend like our audience has never seen it. Give us the elevator overview of what it is, what you're going to break down in it, and then we'll kind of bounce back and forth.
Sure. So the Pyramid of Power docuseries is a project I started back in 2020, early 2020. It started out as 10 episodes, then 12, and eventually became 17, really 18, because this final one is 2 volumes. Originally, this was a presentation I was giving on some speaking tours I was doing in the US back in 2018. It was a 3-hour presentation trying to expose all the various systems and people and individuals who manipulate our world, and also to try to look at what the solutions are there. I always try to come from a solutions background, even with my journalism. And after touring the country, giving this presentation, I realized maybe a 3-hour speech isn't the best format for this. So I figured documentary would be better. And the original goal with this series was to do episodes that would be 30 minutes or less. And I would take my own original research, but also not try and reinvent the wheel when not necessary. So, for example, the episode on banking, we've got books like The Creature from Jekyll Island. We've got documentaries from other people, taking clips from those, taking notes from those, including that, and combining it with my own research and doing it in 30 minutes or less, and then ending each episode with some suggested solutions. Like if you're concerned about the banking system, try these things out. And then, of course, if you want to learn more, watch these documentaries, read these books. And the idea was to just make it a series that would be bingeable. And, somebody could get pulled in with episode 1, which starts very basic with the education system. And then it progresses media, big tech. And by the time you're getting to where we are now in volume 17, if, as you said, if this is totally new to people, I know for some of your audience here and my audience, it's not new, but for the folks who are just starting, by the time they get through that entire series, their entire paradigm and their entire perspective has at the least been challenged, and I would say probably changed, and making them look at the world more skeptical. And so they all sort of build on each other, getting progressively more conspiratorial. And I wanted to also sort of shy away from some of the things I've seen in different documentaries out there. And I'll just say specifically, like Alex Jones, InfoWars documentaries. Those documentaries helped wake me up in 2009, 2010. But they're also filled with a lot of what I consider to be doom porn and kind of fear porn. And the music is intended to make you feel kind of creeped out and freaked out. And you don't necessarily come away from those documentaries feeling uplifted, or you just like, holy crap, the world's going to hell and like it's about to happen. So I didn't want to do that. I wanted to bring the truth and digest these things, but as I said, make it bingeable, pull somebody into episode 1, and now that the series is completed, they can just sit there and just consume one after the other. And the majority of them, I'd say about 90%, are 30 minutes or less. There's a couple that the topics are just too big, like the Intelligence Network chapter, I think 11 it is, are just too big to do it in 30 minutes or less. And then now we're at the point where I'm concluding the series with chapter 17, which attempts to answer the question of who or what is at the top of the pyramid. And we kind of talked about this last time. I was just then finishing the writing of it. And so today, actually, as we're speaking, the volume 1 of chapter 17 is now out. I've just partnered with this new streaming platform called Civil. We can talk all about that, but I'm excited because this has been, it's been a labor of love. And this one, volume 1, I will just make it clear to people, this doesn't, volume 1 doesn't answer the question fully. It's more of kind of we're going through the roundtable groups, the Bilderberg group, again, things that might be familiar with people. I think we bring in facts that haven't been reported elsewhere, at least not very commonly. And then that leads into the second volume, which it's already written, and I'm working on the audio narration right now, and my editors are beginning that. So I've just been knee deep in that research and the writing, and now we're ready to release it. And I'm super stoked because I think people will enjoy it, find it hopefully educational. I can't promise that the conclusion of volume 1 or volume 2 is going to please everybody because different people have their pet theories. But I did my best to take them in a factual, objective approach, not to dismiss any claims and say, let's look at this. People say it's the Jews, they say it's the Jesuits, they say it's the Committee of 300 or whatever else. Let's look at those claims. Let's see what we can actually prove, and let's disprove what isn't able to be proven. And I do consider it to be more of a true crime series than a conspiracy documentary, because everything that's in there, all the transcripts, which people can find, you can find all 16 episodes for free at thepyramidofpower.net with the transcripts, with the links and the sources and everything. And as you mentioned, it's also my YouTube channel and elsewhere. So people can verify everything that I have found and dug in here. And I will say I'm very proud of the stuff that we have on there, because there's certain things that I haven't seen reported elsewhere in this series.
Yeah, man, you, as far as a journalist and your standards and the way that you source everything, and you're so articulate and meticulous on dotting dotting the I's and crossing the T's, and you structure it in such a way that, even people like myself, I consider myself a documentary filmmaker, but the level of in-depth research that you spend and the time, I know how much time it takes to gain the knowledge that you have to be able to tell the stories in the way that you do it. You do it in a fantastic way, man. It's really, really impressive. I mean, above and beyond what the work that I do, your knowledge and I guess your experience on the topics is way beyond, way more in-depth than anything I've ever done or time I've ever spent to tell one of my stories or write one of my documentaries. So I just want to give you the credit that you deserve, man.
I greatly appreciate that, man, because you do great work as well in your documentary. So thank you for saying that.
Great. I appreciate it, man. I don't, compared to you, man, it's like I'm not even scratching the surface at like the knowledge that you have on these topics. It's so vast. And it's like, even for me to sit down there, it's like you're going in several different directions. And I'm just like, man, how the hell does he like, I was just thinking how long and how much research you had to put in there. And I don't want to spoil
the
too
puzzle
much of it.
Is the tough part, man. That's like when you're knee deep in it, it's like I've got, books on books on books. And then I'm watching other documentaries and looking at podcasts. Cause this is one thing I'll just say as far as my process, I'm not afraid to go anywhere. Right. And I think this is one thing that sets many of us apart from the so-called mainstream corporate media is they might see some bits of information, but it's on some random blogspot whatever that was written in the 90s. And they're like, oh, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. That's just some quack or whatever. I will make the time. And sometimes it ends up being a waste of time. And I go down rabbit holes that I don't come up with anything. But for me, I just feel like I can't leave that stone unturned. There might be a bit of information there, or even just another little hint or a clue that sets me on a new path that, would be, useful to the documentary. And I will say that when I'm in that stage, I mean, it is very overwhelming. It was one of the most stressful periods from March to May writing this entire series, the final volume. The final volume, I did not keep it under 30 minutes because answering the question of who's at the top is something that to do it in a way that deserves what I think it deserves, I couldn't do it in 30 minutes or less. So volume 1, as you saw, is 52 minutes. Volume 2 is an hour and 50 minutes. So this is a total of 3-hour conclusion. And it was actually 4 hours originally. And me and my editor took off an hour because it felt like too much. But I will say, for those who are like super nerds and want all the extra details, we're going to turn the entire series into a companion book. And my original script is going to be in the book because, there's important details, but taking them away doesn't take away from the documentary. And at the same time, I still think they're interesting. So those are just kind of like extra tidbits for the conspiracy nerds out there. But when you're in the middle of it, it's hard to sort of navigate that. You've got so much information, and how do you make it, like you said, kind of palatable and digestible? Because just throwing everything at people, which I think is some journalist approach. I'm not going to name any names because I respect other people's work, but there's a lot of people I think who will write these 20,000 word investigation articles, and nobody's going to read that. I mean, well, let's say 5% of people are going to read that, but the average person that's working hard all day and getting off work and just trying to get caught up, they don't have time for that. It's going to take them weeks to read, 30 minutes a day to eventually get your information. And so I try to balance between like nerding out and giving as much detail that, is super cool and interesting and nobody's reported this, and then making it that's something that people can actually understand and not be like, well, this is just overwhelming. And it still might be overwhelming to some people at different points. That's the great thing about being able to pause and kind of digest and let me take in this section, let me look at the transcript and sort of do my own research. But I think that's it's the most fun and the most challenging part, is like having all the data here and then structuring it. And so it took me a while to arrange it in the way that I wanted. Okay, I'm going to start with deep state, and then we'll start with BlackRock, and then go into building, all that stuff, and then as I end volume 1, as it kind of hints at, well, some people believe the Jews are at the top of that, and that's where volume 2 is going to pick up, and sort of doing it in a way though that each section builds on each other, so that by the time it gets to the end, it makes sense and it doesn't just feel like it's going in a million directions. And I think that can be very challenging. I've been lucky to just kind of, I guess, have the time and the patience to do that. And of course, I have to give huge credit to my editors that I worked with, who made the soundtrack amazing and did like some really beautiful, original 3D, designs, like creating rooms, like for example, the Bilderberg Hotel, where you kind of zoom into the room and we see the list of people, like just some really powerful stuff that I'm grateful for, because without that, it's just me talking, right? And that's not as interesting as being able to have these powerful visuals.
Oh, those visuals are great. When you were talking about things and they're animating it on the screen and like this is connecting to this and the lines are coming as you're exactly when you're saying it, I was like, man, they did a really good job at that. Very, very impressed, man. And
yeah, it was
go ahead.
It was a lot of fun to put together.
How do you how do you dedicate your time? Like, you have to generate income, you have a business, you have to get these things done in a certain amount of time. At what point do you say, like, okay, I've done, like, this is all the research I can do, these are all the interviews I can get at this point, like, even if I don't have I don't have the answer, I'm just connecting a bunch of dots. At what point do you decide, like, I've read enough books, I've done enough research? How do you come to that conclusion?
Yeah, that's a great question, because it's difficult to know for sure, because even as I've gotten to this point and where I'm about to do my final bit, where my final part of the series will be completely done. I'm going to record the narration for volume 2. And even as I'm doing that, I'm adding a little bit more, because I've picked up some recent books on the Sabbateans and, their role in the sort of Jewish conspiracy. And I had a section on that, but upon reading some new books, I'm like, I got to add at least another paragraph in there and kind of fill it out. It could go forever. I mean, there's definitely groups that I'll just kind of share a little bit about volume 2. I don't talk about the Knights of Malta. I don't talk about Opus Dei. I did some recent interviews on them. These are groups that I think play a role, but I mean, you could spend, and a lot of people do, you could spend the rest of your life like digging into each of these various secret societies and cults and groups. And I think they each might play a role at different sort of levels in the hierarchy, so to speak. But at the end of the day, I just had to sort of like, all right, this is either going to be a 10-hour documentary that nobody's going to watch, or is it going to be something that is done in a way that people might actually make time to do so? And like you said, it's also balancing, like I have a wife and we have a home life, and I have to eat and I have to take care of my home, and I have to balance that out. I was very lucky that whenever I was doing the writing process, I let her know, like, hey babe, like for the next month, at least 2 months, I'm just going to be glued to the computer. She was bringing me food. She was, playing her role to kind of help me out while I could, sort of focus on this. And I'm extremely grateful for that, because that allowed me to just really not do any interviews and just totally focus. And I even sort of gave up my day job for a little bit, which I write for The Last American Vagabond. That's basically what pays my bills, besides monthly support from listeners and this and that, and book sales here and there. None of that stuff is paying all my bills, but my main gig is doing weekly writing for The Last American Vagabond. So I have a salary for that. But I had to even sort of set that aside, because it was like, if I'm going to get this done, I need to not be worrying about, I have an interview today at 2. I have to stop to write this other article. I have to do a video. And so there was definitely a period in that time where I was still producing content, but it was a lot less than I might have preferred. but it was just like have to be hyper focused on that goal to get it done. And I think it was worth it. Now that I'm on the other side of it, of course, it feels much better. There was times when I was in it, I was like, oh my God, I can't wait for this thing to be over. It's so stressful. But it also, when I get the emails, I don't know if I shared this with you last time, but when I get the emails to people telling me that they're using this series to homeschool their kids, it makes this whole thing like completely worth it. I actually had the really big blessing of my family's from Texas. So I went back to Texas back in May and June. And I actually got to go to this young dude's homeschooling graduation. He reached out to me, directly messaged me. He's an 18-year-old dude. He said, my mom used your series for my government curriculum for homeschooling, and I'm about to graduate. I heard you live near Houston. Would you be willing to come to my graduation? And I said, heck yeah. And me and my lady went there, got to meet his family and be there for him and just kind of encourage him like, hey, dude, whatever you do with your life, man, the world's in front of you. Go kick ass. Do something cool. But that's just super humbling, man. That's not it. I never started doing this series or any of my work thinking, oh, someday somebody's going to use this to educate their kids. But I've gotten at least a dozen or more emails of parents telling me that they've done the same thing with their series, that they have their kids do a report on, they'll pick an episode and tell them, okay, watch this episode on the banking system and do a report for me. And that's going to be part of your curriculum. And that's just humbling, dude. So, I haven't made, I know that you've spent thousands and thousands of dollars on your documentaries. This entire series was crowdfunded. We ended up raising about, I think, since 2020 and our recent crowdfunding, it came out to be about $55,000. All of that money went to my editors. I haven't made anything off this yet because I've just been so singularly focused on I just want to get it done. Even the pyramidofpower.net, our website, guys out there, please, give us a break. It's a pretty basic website. The plan is to upgrade it soon because I've just been I got to get it done. Then I'll worry about marketing. Then I'll worry about, the website upgrade and the book and everything. Now I'm finally at that point. And the cool thing is people are still watching it. They're still consuming it. And it's just been a big blessing, honestly, to be able to, this is the kind of documentary that I wish was available when I was just waking up, because I feel, like I said earlier, there's documentaries out there that will give you some of the information, but then I think they either go too far in hyperbole or speculation or the fear porn. And, especially Alex Jones's work, I think it puts people in a state of imbalance. I remember being okay, I'm waking up, but holy crap, everything's about to happen. The new world's later here, the police state, everything, just this panic mode. And then it had to kind of okay, some of this information's true, but it's not happening tomorrow. I can take a breath, right? And I don't want people to watch my series coming away with that. I want them to come away feeling educated, maybe a little bit scared about the world, but also empowered and okay, there's some solutions. There's some things I can do. Let me dive in and learn more about this. So it's just been a big blessing, man.
So what would you say your goal is? And actually, let me pause that real quick. So the homeschooling stuff, that is the most badass thing I think I've ever heard, man. What an honor and a privilege for somebody to reach out and say something like that. Because I look back at when I was 14 and the shit that I was consuming online. MySpace, I think it came out when I was 16, 17. That was just hitting the internet. And maybe there was a Tupac conspiracy theory. I remember literally printing and having a folder of Tupac conspiracy theories. I was into that when I was a kid, but I didn't even know what a conspiracy theory was. I didn't know there was a thing. And I just wish that there was content like that out there when I was a kid that I would have got into, and it would have opened my eyes to the bigger picture of how even music, I look back and I remember when this was sixth grade. So I had to have been 11. I graduated at 17. So yeah, I probably was 11 in sixth grade. Yeah, I was 11 in sixth grade because I didn't start driver's ed until my end of my freshman year. And yeah, so I was 11 years old and I remember getting the Eminem CD. And I remember putting it on and my mom, it had swear words and everything. I think it said Eminem. So I don't think my mom knew what Eminem really was. Right. And then I remember taking it over and I had it on my my CD disc player. Right. And my headphones on. I took it over to my cousin's house and I was listening to it. And I let my cousin and my aunt came in the room and heard it just to get that off. No, he's not allowed to listen to that. And I remember your mom's not letting you listen to rap music, gay, and now looking back, and then by 14 or by 13, I was living at my girlfriend's house. I had moved out of my parents' house. I was smoking cigarettes. I was drinking. I was partying. And I was just this shit little kid thinking that listening to Eminem being fuck my mom, and fuck adults, fuck authority. And not really realizing that was the system brainwashing and indoctrinating me, designed to destroy and tear apart the nuclear family. That's why they amplified him. That's why they put him at the top of the billboards. And that's why he became this larger than life icon. Now, granted, like, he is extremely talented. I don't want to take anything away from the talent that man has, but he's a piece of shit, right? And he's not a role model. He's not somebody that kids should look up to. And I do my best. I mean, there was a point where my son, because his mom was listening to Eminem, and I just had to tell him, like, listen, this guy's like, what is he rapping about? What is he talking about? He's a piece of shit, you know? And like, kind of teaching it. Now my son doesn't listen to him anymore. He doesn't even care. But, you know, your content is the stuff that I wish that kids got into. And I just wanted to tell you that, man.
Yeah, no, I definitely had that same experience there, man. It's interesting you say that too, because I've got, I don't have any of my own kids, but I've got 6 nieces and nephews. And like I said, I was back in Texas. I was spending a lot of time with some of them, and overhearing some of the music that my 12-year-old nephew's getting into. And it's the current modern equivalent of what Eminem was to us back then, right? It's just, I had to walk in the room. I'm like, what are you listening to? And he's kind of not even really paying attention, but still, it's obviously subliminally still getting in there. And I think it was like Juice WRLD talking about, I'm going to do drugs and die. I'm going to overdose. And obviously that dude ended up overdosing. And I asked him, I said, what do you think about this? And he kind of like laughed it off. And I'm like, dude, change this. Like, let's find something a little better, at least. So I totally get it. And that is, I mean, I never made the series with the intention that somebody's kids would be watching it. But obviously, I think if I had to say like age range this is appropriate for, probably 14 and up, because kids are pretty capable of understanding. There's a lot of information in there, obviously. So some of it might be like they need to digest it a couple times to really get it, especially some of the references if they don't understand different organizations and history. But just the fact that parents feel, inclined and feel like the work that I did is something that they want to share with their kids, that's just a super humbling thing.
Absolutely, brother. 100%. Now, what would you say is your end all goal with this series? Like, were you going on this investigation planning to like figure out, like, I'm going to nail it down and tell you exactly who's at the top of this pyramid? Or was it more so from like an educational standpoint? And then what is your, like, if somebody watched your entire series, where do you hope their mindset is at the end of this series?
So part of that is going to be shared in volume 2. And, I don't want to give you a non-answer, but I don't want to give away the ending either. But overall, I mean, part of it is obviously education. Like, I want to share information that is factual and is credible, because and this is something I've been harping on a lot lately and on social media. I think that the so-called independent alternative media could do a much better job of what is currently going on. And I've seen you kind of out there talking crap about some of the same things. There's all these different influencers that just one example, and there's many examples, but let's say MAGA influencers who Trump can do nothing wrong, right? So they're just going to constantly keep feeding their audience a pro-Trump message. They're going to spin it however they can, right? They clearly have a bias, and which we all have biases. That's one thing that, the mainstream kind of lies about. They try to teach people that, yeah, there you go. They try to teach people that being a journalist means being truly objective. And there is some level of objectivity that I think does matter with journalism. And at the same time, every single person has a bias, and that's okay. The difference is when you lie about your bias and try to pretend like you're objective, even though you're skewing things one way. I think as independent journalists, what I prefer is like, wear your bias on your sleeve. Okay, if you're a pro-Trump guy, that's great. Put that out there. But that doesn't mean you should twist the facts to that bias. You can still have that bias and say, I love Trump, but look, in this instance, he's wrong here, or this thing looks bad, etc. But that's not what you see. Instead, you see people trying to twist the facts to fit their bias. And then they talk all this crap about the corporate media, the mainstream media, when they're doing the same thing, just in their own way. I think that what I'm trying to do with my overall work, but definitely with this series, is level up the independent media, to try to set a standard, not to say that I've got it all figured out or anything like that, but to at least just lead by example. That's the best I can do, right? I can't tell other people what to do. I don't want to spend my time picking and pointing at, why are you doing so horrible? There's a lot of clickbait out there. I mean, how many people a couple of weeks ago said that the world was about to go into World War III? How many people a few weeks ago said we're about to be in civil war? There's no accountability. And I'm not saying the government needs to come in and regulate the alternative media. Obviously, I'm very much against anything like that. I don't want government involved in anything, censoring people, regulating the internet, anything like that. So instead, we have to have personal responsibility. We have to rise and be better. If we say that we're the alternative to the mainstream, then we have to do better than them. We don't just repeat the same garbage. And unfortunately, I see a lot of people out there, and those people are probably making more money than me, and I guess good for them. But at least I can say I've got my principles and I've got my morals, and I'm not reducing myself to clickbait and to just making things up to get clicks and to get money and get views. And so I think that part of my objective with this series, as I said, was to make a series that would be something that my younger self would be drawn to, that I feel like I could share with friends and family, that wouldn't be dismissed. Because a lot of the times the problem with different so-called conspiracy documentaries, there might be facts within them, but the presentation style is crap. Or it's just like, I don't know, your documentaries are more quality than some of the work I've seen out there. And again, I understand we're all on a budget. Not everybody has the ability to get $50,000 or to raise it. I totally get that. I'm blessed to even have that opportunity. But when you see people who are going viral and they're making documentaries, whether it's a big topic like mine or single topics, and they have false information, or they're using just using clickbait graphics, or they're just using screenshots of screenshots of screenshots. That's another one of my pet peeves of just how social media has become just people responding to screenshots of other things from other platforms, and there's no sourcing, there's no tracking that material down. That's why I tried to make sure that every single episode, we've got our transcripts. Here's the links to everything. Here's the documents I'm referring to. Here's the books I'm sourcing, etc. So part of it is that my objective overall with this series and my work is how can we level up the independent media? Well, I can't control what other people do, so I can just try to lead by example and try to set a standard. And I will, of course, give credit to James Corbett of the Corbett Report. He's been doing this for almost 20 years, and his documentaries really, I think, set the standard, at least inspired me to do things the way that I'm doing, including show your homework. Where's your show notes? Where's your source material? Where's your references and things like that? That's something that's really important to me. And of course, by the end of the series and the conclusion of Volume 2, my hope is that there's more people who don't believe government is the answer, that don't believe that voting is going to save us. That's definitely a current that runs throughout the series, that people, if you watch all 16 episodes, you'll hear me reference things like that. And that's definitely a message that is very strong at the end of Volume 2, that I believe, besides the fact that we do have groups like Jewish Power and Zionist, and we've got secret societies and these other groups that absolutely do wield power over the world and have for generations. And that's clearly what I'm drawing attention to. And at the same time, the power that they have is also given to them by the people, because the people don't claim their own power. The people don't take responsibility for their own lives. And I think that's another big thing, is like the belief in authority itself, the belief that human beings need somebody else to rule over them, daddy, mommy, government, or whatever it may be. And so those are definitely some of the strong messages that I'm really trying to emphasize with this conclusion.
Yeah, no, I think you do a great job at it. And I guess I didn't even realize it, that in our documentaries, when me and JJ put out the first What is Treason series, we put out all 35 full-length interviews to every source that we used in that. So It wasn't like I was just clipping 10 seconds of this clip and trying to manipulate what he was saying. I needed to do that to tell my story, but at the same time, I put the full interview up there so that way you can go watch it and do your research, or if you discredit or disbelieve anything, all of those interviews are there. They're full length. They're all on our website, all 35 of them, right? Like that's our source material. And then everything else we used was literally clips of whistleblower testimony in front of Congress. So like you guys can figure that shit out, I guess, in yourself, trying to find those. But
I think that's important,
because my story,
that's important for sure, man.
It was a conspiracy theory to people that didn't know, but it was openly admitted as a fact that our government, RFK is coming out and admitting that our government's running, or HHS was the number one conduit for an international child trafficking and child slavery operation being ran by the United States government. And yet we've still had not one person arrested, which leads me into my next question is, so you take a look at El Salvador, for example, and you see a country that's figured it out as far as a way to eradicate the corruption, solve all of the problems, fix the poverty issue. There is so much opportunity flowing into El Salvador that Bukele doesn't even have to raise the minimum wage. If you're not paying somebody probably 25 to 35% above minimum wage, you're not going to get an employee, because there are so many businesses and so much opportunity right now. You can't find, even building, the hardest thing with developing in El Salvador now is finding a contractor, finding somebody who can build, because there's so much building taking place that good luck finding a builder. You almost have to build it yourself right now, because that's how high in demand these builders are. So we have this country that's El Salvador, which went from the deadliest country in the world to the safest country in Latin America in less than 2.5 years. Say what you want about Bukele, whatever. The man has a 94% approval rating, and some polls, some are as high as like a 97. Others, even his enemy, like his people that hate him, it's like an 89% approval rating. You step foot off that plane, you talk to anybody in El Salvador, 9 out of 10 people are like, oh my gosh, I absolutely love. Even people that have their relatives that are in prison for this mass arrest, these are cartel members, even some of them that have claimed that their citizens, that their cousins or sisters or brothers are innocent. One girl specifically, her sister was married to a tattoo artist. When you're a tattoo artist in a country that's completely ran by the cartels, you're going to tattoo the cartels. You have no choice, right? But he claims that he wasn't actually in the cartels, but he tattooed the cartels. When you live in a town, you're obviously going to have some gang symbols and tattoos on you. Him and his wife, both in prison, and she still loves Bukele, even though she knows that her brothers-in-law and her sister are in prison probably for life and will never get out. They'll never see them again. But what they've done, what he's done for that country, is it's truly amazing, to say the least. So you talk about the American dream. American dream is dead. It's died here in America. I mean, it's in a coffin 6 feet underground. It doesn't exist. The American dream is thriving in America. A man with nothing more than a work ethic can go to El Salvador, and on a 40-hour work week, he can now support a family of 5. Like, that's how great El Salvador is right now. We have that. The Trump administration has seen that. We see what happens when a dictator, if you will, goes in there and just guts the corruption that's rotting the government at the core. And we seem to have tried it every single way, except for just coming in and like literally like, we want military tribunals, we want mass arrests, we want to completely eradicate all of this corrupt individuals. And if we don't, you have this cancerous rot that is rotting your nation from the inside out. It's like if you had cancer in your heart and it's literally in your bloodstream and it's pumping to every organ and every vein and every vessel in your body, you can't, no matter how many white or red blood cells you have fighting off this toxic infection, it's so powerful that it's just rotting your system. And eventually the system's just going to collapse. It can't continue to sustain. It's like a child that's getting, abused by these pedophiles. Their poor little fragile bodies can't sustain that type of abuse for that period of time. Our country can't continue down this path where we have these neocon war hawks, printing trillions of dollars to go drop bombs on innocent women and children. We have this vaccine that was a bioweapon created by the CIA and Mossad to literally kill and castrate our civilization, not just in America, but literally on a global scale. We have insider trading in Washington, D.C. that is so disgusting. You have politicians coming in there as a bartender, leaving as a millionaire 4 years later. You have Nancy Pelosi's net worth of $216 million. And I could go on and you can go on and on and on and on and on. How do you see America surviving this? Like, what is the purpose? Do you see this, they're coming to an end of this? Because if you can't, you have to wake up and realize that America is cooked. So I'm curious on, what are you advising your subscribers and followers to do outside of the education? Like, if you were like, Hey, this is the map, like you want to survive what's coming, here's what the fuck you should do. What are you telling people to do or advising people to do?
Yeah, I mean, you make a lot of great points there. I mean, I personally don't have a lot of optimism for the U.S. being saved or reformed or any of that kind of stuff. In fact, this is sometimes I think I brush up against people on social media because I notice that there's a lot of people who might share some of the same interest or concerns that we have, but they still have this vision of like the life that they lived in the past is somehow going to be saved and they're going to be able to continue doing that. And I often tell people like, look, I think that the sooner you accept that the life, and I'm sorry, like if you built up a life around a 401k and you've worked for 50 years of your life and you think that you can keep doing those things, that's not on the table. That's not on the menu. I mean, We know what is on the menu. We don't need to, repeat the problems. We all know them. Where this is headed: digital ID, control grid, et cetera, technocratic state. So I think that's one thing that a lot of people have trouble with, is just sort of contending with that the life that I've built, I might not be able to just continue going about that. And I think people will try. They will try to ignore what's happening as much as possible and living in their safe bubbles as long as they can. But the problem with that we both know is that sooner or later it's at your front doorstep. And well, you didn't do anything to prepare. You thought somebody was coming to save you, and here it is. And so they're going to march you off to the FEMA camp or whatever else, or you're going to comply. I mean, that's literally what it comes down to, is you're either going to comply as they push digital IDs and these other things, or you're going to resist in some way. And unfortunately, I don't see any sort of big mobilized resistance in the US. Like even during COVID, there was some patches of people pushing back here and there, but you didn't see the millions of people marching in the streets like you saw in parts of Europe and like you saw in London and elsewhere. It didn't exist. There was, like I said, there was some places and pockets, and that was great, but it was nowhere to the degree of organization that would be needed to really push back and to organize. And obviously, politics isn't going to save us. I know there's already people out there who are like, well, Elon's launching the technocracy party. That'll save us. And, or waiting for JD Vance or Thomas Massey. To me, it's just all those ideas are just more faith in the system that's not going to save us. I moved to Mexico in 2020 largely because I think I told you this last time. My partner, my wife, she's here. She's from Mexico. Her family's from Mexico. She was born in the U.S. So we've been visiting for years. We love the culture. We had a lot of reasons already. And when COVID started in March 2020, I told her, baby, let's go visit your family. Let's get out of the U.S. and just see what happens. That summer, we decided we were going to move our whole lives here. I've got land an hour from where I'm sitting right now. We're building our home. My life is out here now. I go back to Texas to see family. Obviously, I still care about what happens to the U.S., but I've kind of already made the move that I think will be long-term, good. Now, that doesn't mean that Mexico is going to be forever safe, or El Salvador, or any of these places are ever going to just be completely free. I think that's maybe even a problem with some people's thinking, because I'll have people ask me, well, Derrick, where's the next safe place I can go to? One thing is, I think it's important for people to not approach this question or this concern with a sort of running away mentality. Like, I didn't run away to Mexico. I came here because I thought the potential for building a better life, not only financially, but the fact that Mexico and a lot of Latin America are further behind in terms of embracing the technology. Mexico City, the big cities, sure, you're going to find all the same stuff. But in the rural areas, like where I'm at right now, there are people who don't have any kind of ID. They deal with cash every day. They're not plugged into the system. They're purposely unbanked, right? I feel like there's much more of a likelihood to sort of build a camaraderie and sort of survive and thrive outside the system there than trying to salvage the United States. That doesn't mean that I'm giving up on my friends or family, and I will continue to support, like during COVID, I came back from Mexico to Houston, Texas, to organize anti-COVID protests because nobody else was doing it. And we were making the news, we were making the newspaper, and I wasn't even living there anymore. But I care that much. But that doesn't mean I think that the U.S. is going to be salvaged in the long term. So I'm not saying that Mexico is the perfect place or telling people they should pick up their lives and move here. A lot of people have, and we've got, a community of people around this country, expats and Mexicans, who are working together and trying to tackle these problems. But I've kind of already made the moves that I think are worth it. I'm not going to give up on the U.S. I'll fight for the U.S., but I don't think that there's enough of an organized resistance. I think there's too many people that are still fat and happy. And just like we saw during COVID, people won't act until they're threatened. And I think, unfortunately, it's going to have to get worse before the American public kind of wakes up. COVID was a little bit, a bunch of people woke up, but then now things have gone back to normal. So people are kind of going back to their normal lives and just forgetting that these same agendas are here. Agenda 2030 didn't disappear. Sustainable Development Goals, it's 2025. We've got 5 years. That doesn't mean on January 1st, 2030, the world's over, but we should acknowledge that these people have plans and they have timelines that they are working hard to stick to. So, whether it's something like El Salvador, which I would love to talk to you, whether here or another day, about that, your thoughts on just how, because I have friends who've moved out there as well, mainly for Bitcoin and things like that. And so I see these options that people are trying. And I have friends who really believe in these ideas of we need to carve out our own, our own enclaves, our own pockets, and build communities outside of the state. That's very much what I believe, like creating parallel systems. I think that's really the answer. So, I wouldn't necessarily tell people like pick your bags up and leave the U.S. tomorrow. But if you think the U.S. can be saved, you got to ask yourself, what are you doing? Are you actively trying to make that happen, or are you waiting for somebody else to come save you? Because I think that's a big part of the problem we have.
That's a very good way you say that. Like, are you actually doing something about the problem? Or are you sitting here in a Twitter space yapping and screaming at Clown World? Jeff Booth says it. I don't know if you guys know who Jeff Booth is. He's a really big Bitcoiner. And, he says, whatever you do in Clown World Doesn't matter if you're screaming at it, if you're fighting for it, if you're fighting against it, whatever you're doing inside of clown world, inside of this fiat Ponzi scheme that we all live in America, you're strengthening clown world, right? It doesn't matter. The only way to, I think it's Iron Rand who says, you know, like when the game is so rigged that your only end result is you lose, well, then your only option is to not play the game, right? So I am working on completely removing myself from this fiat Ponzi scheme and moving my wealth, my businesses, my assets, getting everything. I tell everybody in America, like, if you have an extra house and it's just a spare guest house and you're not using it, sell it, right? Like, get down to a point where, like, if you're 50 and your kids moved off to college and you're in this giant 5-bedroom house, do you really need that 5-bedroom house? Or would you be better off downsizing, getting your assets into whatever you believe in, gold, silver? I suggest international real estate outside of America, because you look at a country like El Salvador, that's going to be literally the Singapore of the West, right? Like, China's putting in a port literally the size of Singapore. They're getting ready to put in their second international airport. It's going to be a huge hub over by Santa Ana. And it's just, you're watching the entire country get developed at a rate that almost reminds me of like what we saw in Dubai over the last 20 years. It's really, really impressive. So the opportunities there are so high. For example, in 2022, I went and looked at real estate, or I was looking at going to El Salvador, and you get a 2-bedroom oceanfront condo for $25,000. This is oceanfront in a gated community with a pool in the back, 1,200 square feet, 2-bedroom and a bathroom. And the master bedroom it's like on a corner, but there's a giant bay. So the bay comes into one corner. So when you're looking out, like when you're laying in your bed, all you can see is palm trees and oceans out both window views. It's like the most beautiful view in the world for 25 grand in 2022. By 2024 of November, when I went there, they were going for 100,000. And I came back in February to put in an offer, and there was none listed. So I was offering 125 to see if anybody would sell, and not one person would sell it to me. Like, that's how fast the price of real estate's going up in El Salvador. So like, you have this opportunity where it's still like 125,000 for an oceanfront condo is in the big picture. I mean, you can't even go to like Puerto Rico and get that, or even anywhere locally and get that. That's a really good price. So it's the opportunity for real estate's there. It'll last for probably another 2 years before it kind of gets gentrified, and, you know, all the expats and everybody around the world wants to buy real estate there, but the opportunities are there. So I'm telling everybody, sell off everything that you can. Like you said, if you're not fighting it, if you're not actually in the battle, if you're just kind of going through the motions, hoping somebody else is going to save you, that's such a bad idea. You have to make, at least in my opinion, you have to make some moves, make some plays. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to build businesses and get my wealth outside of America. And like you said, we're not giving up on America. I just don't know when the FBI is going to kick in my door and fucking plant child porn on my laptop or whatever. I'm going to say the wrong thing and I'm going to get charged with a hate speech crime. Then I'm going to be tied up in this legal battle and they're going to suspend my passport. I'm not going to have this opportunity to leave. You see where I'm going with this?
Yeah, and it's definitely good to at least have a backup plan. Even if people are hearing this and like, well, I don't know, I don't want to leave my family behind, or this is my home. And again, like people will say that, and I talk about this in my book. What we're describing is what I call the exit and build strategy. You decide that you want to exit from one place and go build elsewhere. I think that's the right move for many of us. But I know there are others who are like, look, I was born here, I'm going to die here. That's what I call hold down the fort. So you're going to sit there, you're going to hold down the fort. But again, you got to ask yourself, are you actually doing anything? Or are you just sitting there like a sitting duck and waiting for things to get worse? Because if you're not, if you're going to hold down the fort and you're committed to where you live, whether the US or elsewhere, you better start getting organized, start meeting people locally, start getting actively organized with them. Go to freedomcells.org, meet like-minded people, start growing food together, start, still focusing on the things you're talking about, getting your wealth out of the system. But if you're not doing that and you're just consuming podcast after podcast and watching the world get worse and complaining about it on the internet, then you might want to come up with a backup plan, because that's not going to fix things. That's not going to solve things. And I think it's just wise to be forward thinking and to figure out like what's going to come next. And what do I do if, like you said, if things do progress? I mean, we can see facial recognition is growing. It's going to be impossible to fly in the US within the next couple of years without submitting to facial recognition. Digital IDs are on the horizon. We know all these things. And eventually those might even come to El Salvador. Mexico is definitely, they got some new laws they're trying to pass. But one thing I will say is the beautiful thing about many of the Latin American countries is the fact that, and this is kind of like the push and pull of, as they get more developed, sometimes that development can include the systems that we are fighting against. So it's kind of like a balance, right? But the countries that are developing nations, because they're developing, they don't have all the same infrastructure that you're used to in the United States and in the Western countries. And I specifically mean like surveillance infrastructure. They don't have the tools that, now that doesn't mean they won't come later, but currently they're behind. And so I feel like that gives those of us who have the opportunity and really the willpower, the desire, and the effort. Because I've seen whole families, 3 kids, husband and wife, pick up their entire lives, move out of Canada when it was COVID 1984, and move down to Mexico and buy some property, buy some land, and start a new life for themselves. So it's really just about whether you've got the courage to do it, because people will come up with all kinds of excuses why not to do anything. You know this just as well as I do. I'm sure you've heard the same excuses. They'll say, I've got kids, I've got this, and I get it. There are real things that you have to deal with. But if you really care, and if you're thinking, okay, how am I going to take care of these kids into the future, and make sure that they're safe and they're going to thrive long into the future, and that they have an opportunity because I see the direction things are going, then you're going to do anything that you need to make that happen. And you're going to put all the excuses aside. You're going to figure things out. You're going to come up with a plan. That takes effort. That takes time. It takes money. A lot of people, when push comes to shove, they don't want to be free because they don't want to put any effort into it. They don't want to actually sit down and come up with a plan to think about what it's going to take to be free, because they're afraid. And I get it, fear is a real thing, or they're just sitting around waiting for somebody to come save them. Those are 2 big things I see. It's like this savior thing. Somebody's going to come, solve all my problems, and I don't have to actually change any of my habits or do anything. Or it's just simply paralyzed by fear. And if you let those 2 things win, we know where the future is headed. In a place like the United States, we can see that the predator class, the pyramid of power, they want to destroy the United States. And that's obviously part of their plans. And what comes next, I think we can all imagine. So you can either sit there and have a front row seat to it and watch it, or you can try to be proactive and figure out what you're going to do to take care of your friends and family.
And I think you're very right on literally everything that you just said. And people think to themselves, like, it's not America. When you go to a third world country, I'm getting a haircut in America for $30. It cost me $3 in El Salvador. I'm literally eating surf and turf lobster dinner with filet at an oceanfront resort for $15. That includes tip. That's with the Coke. That's with the drink. That's with everything for $15. So you can be, and you don't have to have a job. Do you know how easy it is to get a job as a virtual assistant for $20 an hour? There are so many podcasters, businessmen, anybody, and you can literally be a VA anywhere. And you're American, you speak English, like at the very least $15. I mean, I was paying my virtual assistant $15 an hour, and all she did for 52 hours a week was just schedule out videos. She would go into a file where my editors already had all of my short form clips out. She would download all of them, and then she would literally just upload to X. You know how long it takes to upload one 3-minute, 1080p video? It takes like 5 minutes, so it's one after another for 52 hours a week. That's all she did. So, and I didn't even, I wasn't tracking her hours. As long as I was posting 4 or 5 videos a day, so she could sit there one day and work, 15 hours and probably get all my videos scheduled out for the month, and then probably take off the next 3 weeks for the most part, right? So there's so many jobs out there. You can teach English, you can teach Spanish on one of these apps, and they pay you $15 an hour. And that's enough money. If you have a house, let's say it's worth $500 and you got $300,000 worth of equity in it, you sell it, you got $300,000 of capital, you move to El Salvador, you spend $150,000, you buy yourself a beautiful piece of land with a nice little home for you and your family, and you got $250,000 left or $150,000 left in this nest egg. Well, okay, buy yourself 1 Bitcoin, lock that up, leaves the 30 grand for you to live off for the next couple of years. And before you know it, your Bitcoin's generating you enough asset capital just to live off. And that's your nest egg. And then if you're doing something for $20 an hour, or your wife does whatever, there's so much stuff you can do online to generate money. I just hope people can realize that there is this opportunity right here for you to, if your wife's in it, you and your wife were okay, let's do this together. If you can get your wife on board and you can move with your kids and start over in another country, man, I can't stress it enough. I have another gentleman that's in the Bitcoin world that he went to Thailand and he bought this rental property he bought a property in Thailand for $20,000, right? It's this 2-bedroom, bungalow or whatever it is. And then he found this, it's a co-op site for other families. So basically he puts his property up into this co-op thing. And then there's 20 or 30 other families in there that have nice properties all over the world. It has to be, a certain quality of property to qualify, whatever. But he's in this thing. So he puts it up for rent. And then when people go to rent that place, they get points. He gets points. So then when him and his family want to go, they can go to this place in Europe or wherever there's houses. There's 30 of these families and they have 50 properties all over the world. So he rented his out for 6 months and then he got basically 6 months worth of credit. And then they just left and they went and lived in this place for 6 months. And when they were there, somebody was renting their other place. And he's they're literally just 6 months here in Europe, 6 months in Thailand, 6 months in Asia, 6 months in Malaysia, 6 months here. And he's like, me and my family we've just been traveling. And they've made a few right plays, and then you're networking with other successful people and you're learning different cultures. And you go into these third worlds and people that haven't been there, like you're in Mexico, so you understand when you're in a first or second world country and you're looking around you, you're like, oh wow, like there's this business is needed, that business is needed, this business, because you know what's coming as they get more and more developed. You're developing into the third world. So you have this opportunity, almost this privilege where you have insight and knowledge into things that these citizens aren't thinking and they don't understand. So with the small amount of capital, you can enter the game. And that's why I say the American dream is dead here, because you can't take a small amount of capital really anymore and build yourself into this mega successful entrepreneur anymore. It's really hard to enter the system because the system is so rigged against us.
And it's so regulated, and it's designed to keep people out from doing exactly what you're talking about. I just wanted to add one other thing to that. I mean, I think this is a really important conversation because it's one of many solutions, and I love to focus on solutions for people who don't always think about this. Everything we're describing, it can sound overwhelming. It can sound like a lot, and it is. But like I said, I mean, well, what's the alternative? Do nothing and just watch the world get worse, and then, your family has no freedom because you were afraid to try something different. I mean, if that's what you want to resign yourself to, that's fine. But the other thing too is I think that there's just such especially I can speak for Mexico, and I imagine El Salvador and a lot of Latin American countries, that the other thing that I think a lot of people hearing this would appreciate is that family culture, community culture is still very much a strong thing. Like there's still this, there's the propaganda that exists on the internet, and, there's reasons for that. Some of it comes from truthful places, but there's also, I mean, when I walk outside my door, I have neighbors right here who are all kind people, just living their lives, going about their day, trying to take care of their kids and their families. And we're all on, we all have a messaging app together where we communicate and let everybody know, hey, does anybody need help with anything? There's still that culture of like going to talk to your neighbor and asking for help or looking for something that really, other than maybe some small rural places in the US where I know that still exists, for the most part, that isn't a thing in the US anymore, where people know their neighbors and talk to each other. And I think that's another big important component. And it's something that we've taken seriously when we came out here. And as we've started to build our community and invite other people to come join our project that we're building out here, is that for us, it's absolutely important to sort of be integrated into the local culture, because not only do we enjoy it and we love getting to know our neighbors, and we don't want to be in a little expat bubble where we don't speak Spanish and we kind of just exist in our own world. But for security purposes, if your neighbors don't know who you are and you're just some foreigner who came in and you have no connection to them and times are ever rough, you might be shit out of luck. But if you build those bonds, you build that relationship, then that can be very useful in tough times. And I think that's something that we really have lost in the US, and that I can say me and my wife, we value very much out here and what we're building. It's something that, I don't know, I enjoy the connection that we have created out here to our neighbors. And, where I'm living right now, you were kind of talking about some of the opportunities. I'm in a 3-bedroom house with 3 bathrooms, our own little driveway in a small neighborhood of 8 homes. So it's just 8 neighborhoods, a little gated community, and it's $500 a month. And then an hour from here is our property of 23 acres with a river flowing through it, and we've got 2 springs of water coming out of the earth. And we've got really lucky. We found a property that already had banana trees and avocados and limes and pears and pomegranates, and we're moving into that. And now our goal is just to build more, build our homes, build a food forest. Like, it took time and energy and effort to come down here with really no plan, I never knew this was going to happen, but I believe we were divinely guided to come here. The city where we live, Morelia, we'd never been here before COVID happened. We ended up coming here just trusting fully that something would work out. We would figure it out. And one of the first people we meet, who's now a good friend of mine, he's born and raised here. His mom's a real estate agent. His mom ended up finding us our property. His dad's an ex-federal agent who has a lot of good connections and can get you out of a jam. All these things just because we took the first step and we trusted that this is what we needed to do. And so I just wanted to emphasize that, like, when you just put yourself out there and you go for it and you let go of the fear, things will happen. It doesn't mean it's going to be perfect. Doesn't mean it's not going to come with its own challenges. But once you trust and you just go, you put yourself out there, things start happening. And so, I just want to encourage people, if you are looking at the state of the world and the state of the US specifically, and you're interested in whether it's El Salvador or Mexico or some other place that calls to you, just take the first step. Just go visit, start meeting people, start looking around, because there's nothing to be lost from that. If maybe you visit and it's not what you thought it was and it doesn't work out, great. But at least you figured it out, right? I think that's just really important, because people get stuck on that first step of just not doing anything and thinking that it's impossible. That'll never work for me. And you can come up with a million reasons why it might not work for you. But until you take that first step and go find out, you're not going to know.
Yo, you're so right, Derrick. It's when I went down to El Salvador, I didn't even really have like my mind hell bent on I'm going to move there. And I went there. Within 10 minutes of getting off that airplane, I was just like, oh my gosh, I knew. Every minute I spent for like 4 hours, it was just like, I just was amazed, and I was looking around and more amazed and more amazed and more amazed. And I was just like, oh my gosh. I knew within that first day I wanted to buy property, but it was such a big risk. I flew back down like 4 months later and I had a real estate agent, but I didn't have like a ton of plans. I went and viewed like 4 or 5 properties, and I kind of just got stressed out of trying to find the right one. And I just seen this beautiful piece of land. I just took it. And then after I took it, I realized the driveway was messed up and it was going to be this big headache to build on it. And then just one thing after another started to fall into place. And now all of a sudden I'm doing this real estate development. I had neighbors that let me cut a driveway through their yard. So I now have an access road to bring up the materials. And it's just like, you got to take the chance. And it's turned out to be literally in my entire life, the absolute best single investment that I've made financially was buying this land in El Salvador. It's going to set me up now. And if I would have never taken that chance, if I would have never left, if I would have just did exactly like, I'm going to hold down the fort, which is what I was planning on doing. It's just like when you're trying to hold down the fort, and holding down the fort requires X amount of dollars per month, and you're already at your max limit where you're working 18 hours a day, 2 jobs, you have no time to spend with your family. And it's like, people are like, oh, I don't want to move. I got family here. Well, when was the last time you actually could go spend, like actually took a day off, didn't have to work, and enjoyed spending time with your family? Oh, it's Christmas. It was this day. Okay, well, can you buy a plane ticket home and come back and visit for Christmas? Oh, yeah, you can. Okay. So how often you go on vacation? I go on vacation twice a year. Okay, so go live where you vacation, and then make your vacations twice a year home to see your family, and you're in the same boat. So I think this is a great conversation. Derrick, where can everybody follow you at? And give us your best shout outs, and I got your pages up here. So
yeah, thank you, brother, for the conversation. Of course, my main website is theconsciousresistance.com. I want to let everybody know, we talked about chapter 17 of the Pyramid of Power. It just came out today on this platform called Civil. That's CIVL.com. And it's a streaming platform and a podcasting network that focuses on these kind of conversations, right? I mean, their whole motto is that they want to upgrade civilization. And by promoting, good content, you can say the Pyramid of Power is now exclusively on there. If people want to get access to volume 1 of chapter 17, it will be publicly available everywhere as usual on September 5th, but it's available starting today on Civil. And I want to give your audience a very exclusive coupon for that. If you do want to go sign up at civil.com/TCR, which is just for the conscious resistance, that's CIVL.com/TCR. When you go sign up for an annual subscription, which is $50 a year, and it gives you access to all of my content, plus some bonus stuff that I haven't released.
Hold on. You said TCR?
Yeah, CIVL.com/TCR.
Okay, you might want to check with that, because I'm pretty sure Civil CI.
You have TRC.
Oh,
switch
TCR?
The R and the C.
Okay. Sorry.
For the conscious resistance.
There we go. Okay.
Perfect. It should pop up in just a moment. Take off the watch and just do civil.com. So I think it tried to take you to the watch page. Yeah. So just civil.com. Yeah. Let's make sure we get it right for everybody. So again, CIVL.com/TCR.
Okay, I did that, and then it just switched to this one. Okay, so it must mean it's.
So scroll down. They might have go down to where it says the Pyramid of Power right there, and just click on that and see if that opens it up.
Did I
above that, dude? Right there.
Oh, there it is.
See if that opens up.
Thumbnail there than the one I'm used to. Yeah,
that's the little trailer there. So either way, if people get to the sign up page, they may be working on it right now. Use the code TCR, which stands for the Conscious Resistance. That's my website, TCR50, and you can get 50% off an annual subscription. So that would bring it down from $50 a year to $25. That's exclusively today for your audience, Ryan. And that gives you access to not only the volume 1 of Pyramid of Power, but I have an interview with G. Edward Griffin. A lot of my unreleased interviews from the series are going to be available there. Plus, they've got a bunch of other cool documentaries. They're not trying to be the new new Netflix, but they're people who are more aligned with what we believe, and they're trying to promote ideas that they think can help humanity out. And so we just partnered with the release of this. Like I said, if you don't want to spend any money and you don't have, that's fine. Just wait till September 5th, and the episode will be available everywhere. But if you want to see it now and support a platform like that, you can go to CIVL.com. And again, the code is TCR50. That'll give you 50% off an annual subscription. Other than that, the rest of the series is at thepyramidofpower.net. And I appreciate you having me on, brother.
God bless you. And make sure you guys swing over and follow Derrick on X as well. He's up to 66,000 followers over here. We should get this man up to 100. So if you guys have not, please swing over there and give this man a follow as well. God bless you, Derrick. Hopefully you have a great day, man. Keep up the great work. And anytime you got any updates, you want to come back on, you're always welcome, brother.
All right, man. Appreciate it.
God bless you. We out. Peace.
Run.